Welcome to Rica Subtest 1 online test preparation course presented by ricatest.com. Thank you so much for joining us. In this lesson, you will learn everything you need to know about competency 8, which is understanding the role of fluency in reading development and factors that affect students' development of fluency. Let's begin with the background information that you're going to need to know for your Rica test. First, reading fluency is reading the words accurately, at an appropriate rate, and with appropriate intonation. Reading fluency is important for the growth of all readers because there is a high correlation between reading fluency and reading comprehension. The three key indicators of reading fluency include accuracy, rate, and prosody. Accuracy is when readers pronounce words aloud correctly. Rate is when the reader reads at an appropriate speed, which means neither too fast nor too slow. The word prosody means to read with the correct intonation or expression. This means that the reader uses variation in pitch, pauses in the correct moments, and for the right length as well. Now, also, when it comes to an end, you're going to either rise with a question mark or you're going to kind of explode with an exclamation mark. Now, with a full stop or a period, you're going to make that full stop. And with a comma, you'll just make a pause. In order to understand the role of fluency for students' reading development journey, we need to remember that the primary goal of reading for our students is to help them achieve automaticity. Now, this is the swift and accurate reading, but also while comprehending that which was read. For your Rica test, you'll want to know each step of the automaticity stage or the process to reach automaticity. First, students will achieve swift and accurate letter naming. Then, the students master single syllable words with regular letter sound correspondences and high frequency sight words. Next, students read multisyllabic words swiftly and accurately. And finally, our students in the upper elementary grade levels read words with irregular spellings as well as content area words that are often found in their social studies, science, and math textbooks, for example. Without fluency, a student's comprehension will be negatively affected. This relationship is explained by the automaticity theory, which states that a reader who has achieved automaticity can decode the words being read as well as understand the meaning of the words that were just read. However, students who struggle to decode words read slowly, and this leads to issues with focus and getting distracted. And this leads to losing track of the text and negatively affecting reading comprehension. On the flip side, when readers achieve fluency, they are able to stay on track, to focus on the meaning of the words, and therefore comprehend that which they're reading. Furthermore, remember that the more fluency key indicators that are activated and that are achieved, the higher the potential for reaching reading automaticity there is. There are, however, factors that work to disrupt fluency. So let's talk about these now. Weak word analysis skills, stopping frequently to decode unrecognized or unfamiliar words, lack of familiarity with content vocabulary, lack of background knowledge, lack of familiarity with other complex syntactic structures will all disrupt fluency. Let's go over the first right now. Weak word analysis skills. This is the most common reading problem for students who are struggling to decode words. The major issue that persists with students who have weak word analysis skills is that they continue to encounter unfamiliar words. This slows their reading rate, which causes their reading comprehension level to sink. The next factor that disrupts reading fluency is having a lack of familiarity with the content vocabulary being taught. Informational books, such as the ones found in social studies and science textbooks, become more heavily used as students enter upper grades. In order for students to comprehend these informational texts, they will need to have the skills that allow them to decode more challenging vocabulary, which are often found in these textbooks. Let's look at two types of content words where students find difficulty. First, there are one use words. These are words that we really only use for a specific purpose. A word like aorta, for example. Second, we have multisyllabic content words. These are used for a variety of contexts and subjects. Example words might include cycle or phase. The next factor that disrupts fluency is having a lack of background knowledge around the topic that the student is reading about. Let's learn using an example. Now, I'm not an expert in physics. I only have a very fundamental understanding about the subject. So even if I opened a physics textbook and used my structural and my syllabic analysis skills to swiftly and accurately read through the text, my lack of background knowledge about physics would really stop or definitely hinder my comprehension of what I was reading. And this is exactly what can happen to young learners who lack the background knowledge about the topics they might be reading about in, for example, social studies or science too. As students move into upper elementary grades, the structure of passages in both their fictional as well as nonfiction texts increasingly become more complex. Students are faced with structures that include higher leveled dependent and independent clauses, which oftentimes includes new academic language inside these passages. This complex syntactic structure will also disrupt a student's reading fluency. Decodable texts provide excellent support for students learning to read. As young readers build their reading skills, they will need to grow out of these decodable texts and into reading books that will allow them to acquire new phonics skills while practicing reading new high frequency words that include content area vocabulary, as well as more advanced letter to sound relationships. Direct fluency instruction is covered in the Competency 9 lesson. However, for now, let's simply recall that direct and explicit instruction is needed to teach reading skills. Additionally, fluency instruction requires providing students with many oral reading opportunities along with teacher feedback. The Rica test will ask you about using independent silent reading in regards to building a student's fluency skills. So, for your exam, you will want to know the number one, limitations of using independent silent reading to increase fluency. And number two, how to make independent reading more effective to support our students' fluency development. Now, although practicing reading is totally excellent for students, the major problem with independent reading is really knowing whether or not a student is reading fluently in their head, because it's silent reading time. Teachers, in order to kind of combat this problem, we need to find ways to support independent silent reading to make sure that the practice is most effective to support our students' fluency development. And now, to do this, teachers provide students with the appropriately leveled books. That's the major way. And then, secondly, we have to make students accountable for what they're reading. So, these two in combination is how to make independent reading more effective. Strategies for this making students more accountable include using reading logs, book reports, presentations, having individual conferences with the students to meet, talk about the books that they're reading. Well, that is it for competency number 8. But before we leave, we still learned a lot here. So let's just do a quick recap. Remember that reading fluency is absolutely crucial for the growth of all readers because there is a high correlation between reading fluency and reading comprehension. Both of these reading areas are required to reach automaticity, which we continue to say each lesson is the goal of reading. Next, The three key indicators. This is really important for your test. So remember these. That's accuracy, rate, and prosody. These are the three key indicators for reading fluency. One more time, accuracy, rate, and prosody. And being that the goal of reading is to reach automaticity, think of fluency as being a key ingredient needed to reach that goal. First, students need to achieve swift and accurate letter naming. Then, they need to master single syllable words with regular letter sound correspondences and high frequency sight words. So, is this that they can, excuse me, this is so they can get onto the third step, which is the ability to fluently read multisyllabic words and read them swiftly and accurately. Finally, this is, remember, the stepping stone to reach automaticity within fluency. And finally, the last step here is our students in the upper elementary grades. They will read even the irregular spelling words and content area words that are found in their social studies and science textbooks fluently. The interrelationships that can negatively affect fluency are the same ones that have the potential to help a student reach automaticity. Remember, these key indicators, which are accuracy, rate, and prosody, without any of them, fluency suffers. So, if students read too slowly, that's rate, this causes them to feel frustrated, and this will definitely negatively affect their reading comprehension and ultimately just does not allow them to reach automaticity. This is why fluency is so important, and it is the main takeaway from this lesson. The factors that disrupt fluency are built onto the backs of the same three key indicators: accuracy, rate, and prosody that were just mentioned in the last slide. Once one domino in this line falls, so does a student's ability to swiftly and accurately read a text passage, and then furthermore, to remember what they read. Remember that the number one problem that the Rica Test administrators want you to demonstrate your understanding for regarding factors that disrupt fluency is that if a student stops frequently to decode unrecognized or unfamiliar words, weak word analysis skills are most likely the culprit. One more time, that's weak word analysis skills, because that is the most likely culprit when fluency is hindered from our students reading. However, problems also arise when a student lacks familiarity with content vocabulary, they don't have the background knowledge, or they simply lack familiarity with other complex syntactic structures. Think about the informational texts. Although a story from a fiction book is mostly comprised of just words, when we get into nonfiction, think about a textbook, there's words, diagrams, captions, pictures, and we need to teach our students how to read those too. Decodable texts provide excellent support for students who are just learning to read. Now, as young readers build their reading skills, they will outgrow decodable texts and into reading books that will allow them to acquire new phonics skills while practicing reading new high frequency words that include content area vocabulary and more advanced letter to sound relationships. Direct fluency instruction is fully covered in Competency 9. However, for now, let's simply understand that fluency instruction needs to be direct and explicit, and the instruction requires providing students with many oral reading opportunities along with teacher feedback. Although practicing reading is excellent for students, the major problem with independent, silent reading is knowing whether or not a student is reading fluently when they're reading silently. Because this is the case, teachers need to make sure students read with just right reading level books. That's their independent reading level. And they're held accountable for what they read. And we do this using book reports, presentations, reading logs, or just simply having a one-to-one conversation with the student to, talk about what they're reading. Thank you so much for joining in this test lesson. When you're ready, go ahead, take the Competency 8 quiz, check your understanding of this material, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Thank you very much.